Welcome everyone to another episode of the Rachel and Coyote Show, and it's Rachel Maldonado here. She is a therapist and a life coach, and we're going to talk about a subject today which I can definitely talk on, and that's divorce and men. So I'll let you kick this off, Rachel. What's going on?
Yes, Kyle, I am so excited about this topic because I get asked about it. So, very prevalent, probably affects a lot of men.
Yeah,
Divorce, it's a heavy topic, but I think it's important to talk about.
definitely. It's been almost 6 years since I was single, but I was married for 17 and then divorced for about 10. And we've talked about the dating scene before, and you get some weird ones. Sometimes I'd meet someone and it would go pretty well for a while, but then I'd meet those that were I don't even know how to describe them. It was awful. And I kind of feel like the divorce guy today, uh he almost has to get on, one of those dating sites. That's a one of the safer ways to find somebody that has things in common with you. And you know the world has changed so much over the last few years, and a guy, especially the single white man, it's like everything he does is awful. He's just he's a target in a way. um I don't want to sound like a victim here, but I mean that's the way it kind of feels. They're attacked. They're made to feel like they're less than. And so it's a little bit easier, I guess, for older guys, because you're kind of used to the most of the women are kind of like you in a way. But the younger guys, I don't know how they do it. And then a lot of my friends who've gotten divorced, they've been divorced for 20 years and are still single.
Yes. So I think that there is such variety in that some people are divorced many times. Some people get divorced later in life, some people young. It really runs the gamut, but it affects a lot of men. So it is an important topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've got guys who they either get attacked because they're a manly man, I guess you say. And so you either got a guy that stays single or becomes a beta male. And I mean, it's a sad truth. You you got guys that they're scared to approach women because they're afraid to be me too. So what is a guy to do, other than
Yes.
get on dating sites?
Yes. So, I'd like to back up a little bit. I think before the men start finding love, start dating again, they should really process what happened,
Hmm.
because it would be very difficult to start a relationship with someone new without processing some of the things that happened
True.
to you.
True.
Sometimes it's a very amicable divorce. That's a little rare. Usually, there's a lot going on. And I would really recommend men who are going through a divorce, after the divorce, thinking about getting a divorce, I would really say that you should go see a therapist just to talk about some of the things that are going on. Very complex. I would do that first before you jump into dating again.
Oh, most definitely. I think you need to take at least a year or two to discover yourself again, because the guy that's married, most of the time they lose who they are, and they live for the family and not so much for themselves. And so they are detached. They forget the things that they love. And and of course you got the guys that go golfing and watch sports and stuff, but honestly, you still kind of lose who you are. Now, I got married very young. I was 19,
Mm,
and I was married for about 17 years. We shouldn't have got married that early, but we would kind of split up for a little bit and then go mess around and then get back together again. And I think getting back together was the financial uh ease,
Yes.
because it's difficult, and especially if you're trying to maintain two households for a guy, it's really hard. um
Yes.
as my kids were about junior my boys were junior high age and my daughter was high school age, it was a little easier for her. And anyway, I had to change a lot, and fortunately I got custody of the kids. But once again, it's you're maintaining a family,
Yeah.
and it's difficult. You're a guy and you're trying to take care of these kids. I don't know how single mothers do it, to be honest with you. It was hard as all get go for me. But then we've got some of my friends who have, as soon as the kids were old enough to move out, they'd get a divorce because the husband and wife were practically strangers. They're almost
Mm.
like they were roommates instead of lovers.
Yes.
So once the kids were gone and they didn't have that in common and they didn't spend enough time together, they forgot who each other were, and then they just went their separate ways.
Yeah. There are a lot of factors going on, but you bring up a very important one, which is that people evolve. How you are as a young man at 19, later on after the kids, after 17 years, you're different. And so you evolve together, you compromise together, you learn together, or you do grow apart. So there is that evolve piece. And I would piggyback on that to add that also sometimes if you haven't really looked at how you're doing things, you may not be happy with where you're at or how you're doing things. So you evolve, you change. And then as you change, sometimes you don't always like how you are, and you think it's because of the person that you're with. Maybe that's a contributing factor.
Mhm.
But a lot of times when people they separate or they get divorced, they want to experience or be someone different. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
that double whammy of you evolve and you want to see yourself differently. You called it finding yourself.
Now, when you have men come to you after the divorce, do they feel like they've failed and like they're kind of less than as a man?
Mm. So, that concept, the imposter syndrome, it is not solely for divorce. This can be in corporate, this can be in friendship, this can be in a relationship. So it's such a big concept. I would say that it is not, the reason someone would say, hey, I feel like a failure in my marriage. I mean, that's possible. Men rarely say it like that.
Yeah.
They don't say it that blatantly. You have to read between the lines and see where someone's coming from, and it's wrapped into the story. Their kids, their ex-wife, relationships that they have now, work, it's all wrapped into a story, their life. It's rarely said quite in that way, but it goes to that double whammy of you evolve and you want to look in the mirror and feel happy about who you are. And sometimes you're not happy with who
That's
you
true.
are, how you were, in that relationship. Very possible.
So one thing that I've thought about is how when you get a divorce, and if it's not amicable, which
Mm.
most of them aren't,
Right. They're
you,
not.
well, you have this person who you were married to all of a sudden brings up all these terrible things about you, and just talks down to you. You either get a guy that gets angry and is like, oh, you're full of it, or they hate themselves.
Mm,
And
mm,
so what about that factor of when somebody does hate themselves?
mm. So this is very complex as well. Some divorces take years. Very rarely is it a quick process because many states have a waiting period as well from the separation before you can file. So it depends on the state laws. So it can be a long, drawn out process. Although certainly I do have a friend that they got divorced in 29 days. So it does happen. But when you got kids and you also have assets, it can get very, very rough. And so you may think, oh, I know this person. I've been with them for decades. They wouldn't do that or whatever. And even when you think it's amicable, it can turn into, crazy town. So it's so complex that I would say you have to take that process of getting divorced a little bit separate. It's so volatile. It's so stressful and it can be so traumatic that it's really its own, beast, for which I recommend going to your therapist weekly, during that process. When you get out of that, there's a lot of healing to be done, but you do some work while you're in it. But when you're in it like that, it's very hard. It's very hard to process. It's almost like you got to get through that, to really come out on the other side. Does that make sense? That process, it's so hairy in the moment,
Yeah. But do you have guys that actually hate themselves after that?
So I will say when you have low confidence,
Hmm.
low self-esteem, which, can be a factor when you feel like someone that you were with does not want you, that happens. It's not just from a divorce, though. It can be from job satisfaction, bullying from colleagues, lack of friendship, loneliness. There are a lot of reasons to feel down about yourself.
Hmm.
A hard divorce can contribute to that, but I would say it's multidimensional. It is not simply, this person that I was married to made me feel bad about myself. It's a little bit more complex than that. However, in that moment, when you're going through it, it can be a lot.
Well, it does hurt your confidence quite a bit. It took me a couple of years to build mine up, and I just I built my confidence up though with the wrong women, I think. And
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
that's another thing. You're almost to the point of desperation. You almost take anybody.
Yes,
You
yes.
run across those?
I think that it is really important, like what you said, that you got to take time for yourself, figure out some things. You have to learn how to vet women, because after going through a rough divorce, it is so stressful that a lot of people are looking for something. You're lonely, you feel less confident, a lot of things going on. And you have to have a core element that you're okay with yourself, that you can walk away, from a bad situation, woman who isn't right for you. And so you got to work on yourself. That's why you really should go to therapy, to be honest. You have to, because else you're gonna get in trouble.
Oh yeah.
You put in the combination of, lonely, lack of confidence, just being in something new, single. It's a lot, and you've got to be prepared.
There were a few that it was very difficult to walk away from, but then once I kind of knew who I was again and felt, I was confident enough that, hey, I'm a good guy. I got a good job. I take care of business. I love family.
Yes.
And if somebody's values didn't line up with mine, I was okay to walk away. And it took me 10 years to get married again, but I felt more confident this time in the marriage.
Mm.
Um, once,
I
but I
I
mean,
will.
here's something else before I pass it on to you. There's also those guys that say I'll never get married again. I was one of those,
Ah,
but I found the right person. At least I feel like I have. We've done pretty good so far.
yes, good for you. So I will say that seems to be a common theme simply anecdotally that when men get divorced, in a way, they do want to couple up again sometimes because that's what they're used to.
Mhm.
They like it. So, they want that experience. But just because you want to couple up doesn't mean you want to commit. And so, anecdotally, I think that men right out of a divorce, there is the rare exception, but a lot of men, they may want to couple up, they may want to date, but a lot of them do not want to commit
Yeah.
because that period of divorce, it was so stressful, so hard, whatever they went through, that they are very gun shy. So that is very accurate.
Yeah. It's like I don't want to go through that again.
Yes, it
uh,
is that hard. It's that hard. And once in a while you get a couple that is very amicable and they do it the right way for the kids. But even for the very stressful divorces, I would say that if you got the kids, a lot of times the mom and the dad not going anywhere. They're for life. So you will find that over time, some things will get better. Some things will get better. Not always, but you got to give a little time. Right close to when it happens is the most stressful.
oh yeah.
Over time, you and your partner, you hopefully work it out and figure it out for the kids. Maybe you're better off not being married, but you try to co-parent, and they are different things.
Oh yeah. Now, can I ask you something? It's a little bit on the sensitive side, but do you have men that once they go through a divorce that they have a trouble with their libido?
Yeah. So I know I keep saying this, Kyle, but it's very complex. Erectile dysfunction, lack of sexual desire, all of these things, they are not tied to divorce. They are tied to stress, work, bullying, self-esteem, lack of confidence. There are so many issues. So, honestly, ED, that doesn't have to be divorce, to be honest.
No, I hear you. I mean, I just wondered if maybe divorce was a contributing factor to some men. I mean, I know they have other stressors in life that can cause that, but going along with confidence, sometimes it can be difficult. You know, uh, not
Yes.
for me, but
You have to put that in there. So, okay, I hear where you're
disclosure.
going with this question. And what I would say is that if a man has been with one woman for a long time, decades, it can be nerve-wracking to get out into the dating world. But it can be that way if that man in his early 30s or, later. You still got a little bit of nerves. And when you meet someone you really like, there's always nerves, which I encourage. I think that's a good thing. You want to feel alive. So it's it's everybody, right, Kyle? It's everybody. Everybody get a little nervous. Women too, they feel nervous. Men feel nervous. Everybody's nervous. It's the men that are not nervous that have been with a lot of people that maybe you should watch out for, because if they don't feel, they don't have the natural, reactions of being a human. Those are the men that you want to watch out for. So I'm not so concerned about that. And those are things that they could talk about with a therapist, because they want to project confidence when they're dating. And it is real, but of all the things to worry about, to me, that is a symptom of something deeper,
Yeah.
a symptom of, how you feel, core, confidence, that kind of thing.
Well, I've
Very
noticed.
fixable, very fixable.
I have noticed some of the guys are they can become numb and they just don't care anymore, and they do they'll just hop from one bed to the next just to satisfy that need, and otherwise they just don't care. Do you run
Ooh,
across
interesting.
clients like that?
So there's a couples therapist, Esther Perel,
Mhm.
and she has made the statement, which I think is very accurate, that it actually takes a lot to try not to care at all. about these casual sexual liaisons.
Mhm.
So even the one night stands and this and that, you look at these men and you think, oh, they don't care. They don't care about women. They don't care about themselves. And to be honest, this is not true. This is how it looks to the casual observer. But if I were to talk to that man, no, it is never, ever the case that it means nothing. It could mean that this man have some real core things he needs to work on about himself, but it's a symptom. What are
Yeah.
you doing? What is this pointing to? It's always something deeper. So that's how it looks. There's other things going on.
Well, for myself, and I say I'm just speaking from my perspective. Once I got divorced and some time went on, I ended up going to therapy and learned to work on myself.
Yes.
And I do encourage people to do that. And I mean, not just to give you money, but no, but seriously, you need to get to know yourself again. And if you don't love yourself, it's going to be
Mm,
difficult to love somebody else. And you also have to find somebody that you have something in common with. 'Cause for me, I fell in love, and I was getting married for love's sake, and not realizing that we were really two different people. And we were on again, off again twice during our marriage. She left me through some very crucial times. One, I had double hernia surgery, and when I got home from the hospital, and mind you, I had to find somebody to come get me, the house was empty. So I wasn't able to work. I couldn't take care of myself. I was fortunate that my mother and a friend of mine were good enough to come by and check on me and take care of me. But
yeah.
trying to recover was very difficult. And then the second time was right after I had my heart attack,
Mm,
and she ran off with another guy. Well,
mm.
that'll kill a man's confidence right there.
Yes. Yes.
It took me actually being with an older woman to kind of help bring my confidence back.
Mm,
I
yes.
don't recommend that you take that route, but that's just what happened to me.
Yes.
And once I got to know who I was again, the things that I liked, my morals, I found someone who was very compatible with that. And we still have our differences. Don't get me wrong, but for the most part, we can agree on most everything. And I mean, why
Yes.
wouldn't you want to agree with somebody like me?
Yes, yes. So Kyle, you bring up your experiences, and I think that it is very brave of you to share heartful things that happened to you. And when you have those kinds of things, life is hard. What happened to you is hard, and you must process from that. And so if you don't do the work, you flounder. But
Mhm.
you do the work, and that is how you are able to find love again. The men who do not do the work, that they don't process what happened, and sometimes it can be very traumatic, the things that they have gone through. If they don't do that, it can be very difficult to
Yeah.
move on and live your life. So, can you do it on your own? Of course. Do it on your own, good friends and family. Not everybody has that, but sometimes it is faster to process with someone,
Right.
in therapy. And so you did a good job. And that is why you were able to find love again, because you did the work, find
Well,
yourself,
I don't
find
want
love.
I don't want people to think that, I was perfect in the marriage, because I wasn't. I did things that I shouldn't have. One of them was the drinking and all that. And, I became emotionally detached from the family at one point. But that was kind of what happened the first time we broke up. The second time, I felt like I was really working on things and changing. And
Yes.
maybe it wasn't enough. It was too
Yes.
late. I don't know.
I wouldn't say not enough or too late. These are, and they're just not helpful. I would say that life is hard and that we learn, you know, and so you simply go forward you look what happened, you try to process, and then you're happy that, the life that you live now, that you have the love that you want, and for other men, whether they get divorced young in their 20s or they get divorced after being with a partner for decades, it is always hard. They all got their own story. It all affected them in difficult ways. And I think that, men, they have to, go a little easy on themselves too. Like, hey, this is not an easy thing. This is a huge life transition.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've got to stress, because I didn't always process all the grief that I went through, and it still affects me even after 20 something years. Some of the things that I'd went through,
Yeah.
you've got to feel the emotions. Don't
Mm,
use drugs and alcohol to block it, you or to drown it, whatever you want to look at it. Feel those feelings, mourn if you need to mourn, go through it,
mm,
because it's it's very hard when you should have felt that at the time, and here it is years later, and you
yeah.
still get affected by it. I mean,
Mhm.
the divorce, I'm fine with. I'm over it. I don't care what she does with her life. She doesn't care what I do with my life. Our kids are,
Yeah.
grown up and they have kids, but they're, I mean, divorce, death, all these things. Feel those feelings. For heaven's
Mm.
sakes, please feel those feelings.
Yes, that is so important, Kyle. I'm really glad you said that. It is very sound advice. And I always say this. I say this to my clients. I say this for myself. You have to go through pain before you get to pleasure. Sometimes it's the reverse, but a lot of times you do. You must process the pain to get to pleasure. And when you try to shortcut, like you mentioned, drugs or alcohol, or, some men, they just go from woman to woman, it's very superficial.
Very.
If you do not process and you don't feel the pain, you will never get to pleasure, love, things that matter. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because a lot of people, they're so afraid, they don't want to go through it. And it's so hard, you run away, but it's going to come out in other ways. So you deal with it now, or you're going to deal with it later. And you deal with it later, it probably grew into a monster.
Oh gosh, my little brother passed away. It's been almost 22 years,
Mm,
and I still find myself from time to time thinking about him and then crying, and because I didn't back then. I
yeah.
was, I mean, drinking so much and doing cocaine, anything I could not to
Mhm.
feel. And
Yes.
now that I'm sober, now I'm feeling those emotions, and
Yes.
it's
Yes.
more difficult to handle sometimes. It really
Mm,
is.
yes. Kyle, you explained it so beautifully, that you masked before with the drugs and the alcohol. And then when you don't have those crutches, those feelings, you got to process. Yeah. So you explained it very beautifully. And I hope that helps the men, that, hey, you can get through it. You're going to be okay. Divorce, whatever you have going on, it's going to be hard, going to be painful. But there is a life after that. You can live and you can find love.
Exactly. Well, I don't want the women out there who might be listening to this think that I'm just dogging on women, because that's not the point of this. This is just from the men's
Yes.
perspective. Um, I know women out there that have gone through a lot of garbage themselves, and they've been with some pretty crappy men, but it goes both ways. But you hear more of the women's side, I think, than you really do the men's side. So that's what the purpose of this was. But
Yes. Very important. I really want men to feel heard in our society.
yes,
They need to be heard. It's important.
yes, men, you need to open up. Go to a therapist, get these things out, um, figure out who you are. Once you know who you are and what your morals are, then you find somebody that's compatible with that. And I promise your life will be a whole lot better. So, Rachel, thank you for taking time out of your day to be here. I mean, I know this is our show, but you're a busy person.
It's a pleasure, Kyle. I am so excited because this topic, I have been wanting to touch on it for a while. So it's a pleasure. I'm so excited to be able to offer encouragement to the men. Doesn't matter, you get divorced, it happens to you, you're going to be okay. There's life after divorce.
Mhm. Things get better. I promise. I
Yes.
promise. I mean, thing go good for me, thing go good for anybody.
Yes.
But if you have a comment you'd like to share, or if there's a topic you want to talk about, put it in the comments and we'll look it over and we'll get back to you. If you're new to this channel, I want to thank you for stopping by. Please come back, subscribe. For those of you who are regular to the channel, thank you for your support.